This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Operation Epic Fury almost over. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. President Trump reiterating his prediction the war in Iran will be over with this month. In a primetime speech to the nation last night, he said our military objectives are close to being realized.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Age where they belong.
The president did not say whether securing the Strait of Hormuz is a prerequisite for ending the war, but he did urge our allies to cash in on the oil there.
Go to the Strait and just take it, protect it. Use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated.
Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg says victory is not possible without a change in leadership. He says the Islamic theocrats who rule the roost in Tehran with an apocalyptic worldview need to be eliminated for this war to be won.
And as long as you got people like that in charge, with all that conditioning they've had for the last 40 plus years, I think there needs to be a complete change of government.
In his speech last night, the president said regime change has already happened in Iran. An Iranian missile barrage last night rained down on central Israel as the Jewish state was celebrating the first night of Passover. On Capitol Hill, Republicans are backing a plan to fund the Department of Homeland Security.
House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune are now on the same page, announcing a Trump-approved plan to pass a bill that would fund all of DHS except ICE and CBP. It's similar to the bill the Senate passed with Democratic support at 2 a.m. last Friday. Hours later, Speaker Johnson trashed that Senate bill. But now, with President Trump's approval, Thune and Johnson say that Senate-passed bill is the path forward, and Democrats are claiming victory. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, writing on X, quote, House Republicans caved.
Fox's Bill Malugin on Capitol Hill. Things are not looking good for the president's executive order that strikes down birthright citizenship. Oral arguments on the matter happened yesterday at the Supreme Court. Legal analyst Jessica Levinson says the justices seem skeptical of the president's position here.
I think the Trump administration absolutely has an uphill battle here. I think an originalist perspective for this particular issue indicates that you cannot executive order your way out of the Constitution.
Birthright citizenship says children born in this country are automatic citizens of this country, regardless of their parents' immigration status, a ruling expected in early summer. It's up, and away for the Artemis II mission.
Booster ignition and liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Correspondent Brandy Campbell has more from Cape Canaveral.
It's official. NASA has sent 4 astronauts into space on a 10-day journey with the goal of taking a test ride around the moon as part of the Artemis II mission.
The astronauts are in low Earth orbit today, testing out their equipment before they accelerate toward the moon tomorrow. It'll take about 3 to 4 days to get there. NASA Chief Jared Isaacman.
So after a brief 54-year intermission, NASA is back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon.
The Artemis II crew scheduled to return to Earth a week from tomorrow. If all goes according to plan, they'll splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Thursday. Yeah, that was a tornado in Cattaraugus County. Problems with pot at school. And is it time to separate private and public schools when it comes to high school sports?
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. Easter weekend fast approaching, and the weather news, it's mixed. Well, that forecast details coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll stick around for that. Thank you. It's a sure sign of spring, or so we hope. The removal of the Lake Erie ice boom. That will happen on Monday. It's done anytime the ice coverage on Lake Erie is less than 250 square miles. Every winter since 1964, the ice boom has been installed to reduce the amount of ice entering the Niagara River. The latest the ice boom was removed was May 3rd, 1971. The earliest was February 28th, 2012. The cleanup continues from Tuesday's destructive storms in New York and Pennsylvania. A tornado with 100-plus mile-per-hour winds touched down in the town of Machias in Cattaraugus County. James Bush lives nearby in the town of Gowanda. He tells WIVB,
golf ball size hail coming right at us, busting the windows out, and everybody was panicking. It was pure chaos. The water was rushing in everybody's basements. The stuff was just everywhere.
The deluge of water in Wyoming County flooded the hobby farm of Shannon Morgan. She spoke to Wham 13.
This creek has run high, but never flash flooded like this ever. It's like up to my knees within probably 5 to 10 minutes. My pigs are swimming.
My pigs are swimming, she says. That's how bad it was. Meantime, Houghton University in Allegheny County is in recovery mode after the Genesee River spilled her banks, causing widespread flooding on campus.
Classes have canceled. Offices are closed. This is a really, really difficult and unexpected event for our area and for our campus. We are persisting, and God is faithful and continues to provide.
Houghton University President Dr. Wayne Lewis telling Family Life News.
Complete recovery could likely take a couple months. A lot of that will depend on getting the insurance company in, getting adjusters in, getting an assessment of what the damage is, and then getting the work done. But we'll be back up and fully operational next week.
Relentless rain the past few days led to a major tie-up on a critical interstate in upstate New York. Both the east and westbound lanes of I-88 are shut down between exit 10 and exit 12 near Unadilla. The closure due to a sizable sinkhole underneath that highway. A 9.5-mile detour will remain in effect until further notice. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is pausing the purchase of multiple warehouses in Pennsylvania. Those warehouses were going to be converted into ICE detention centers. That's not going to happen now. The buildings located in Schuylkill and Berks counties. The death of a refugee has been ruled a homicide by the Erie County, New York medical examiner. Comes a month after the migrant was dropped off at a closed coffee shop in the city of Buffalo by federal immigration officials. Erie County Health Commissioner Dr. Gail Bernstein at a press conference yesterday.
As a medical doctor, I will be very clear here that using the word homicide to describe the manner of death is a clinical definition. So the designation of homicide does not imply intent to cause harm or death.
The cause of death in this case was determined to be a perforated ulcer in the small intestines caused by hypothermia and dehydration. Former Erie County District Attorney John Flynn.
If I'm the AG, I'm going to do an investigation, and the first thing I want to do is kind of tone down that word homicide, because that word homicide gets thrown out there now, and everyone thinks someone murdered this guy. We have no idea what happened.
The victim, who was blind and did not speak English, was bailed out of the Erie County Holding Center back in February. ICE agents dropped him off at a Tim Hortons about 5 miles from his home. 5 days later, he was found dead. Guilty, Your Honor, a former prison guard in central New York, convicted on 5 of the 6 charges he faced in connection to the beating death last year of an inmate at a correctional institution near Utica. Onondaga County District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick served as special prosecutor in the case.
A civilized society is judged how they treat the poorest and most needy amongst them. And amongst those are incarcerated individuals. I put a lot of those people there. but they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
Ex-corrections officer Jonah Levy facing 25 years in prison for manslaughter. He was acquitted yesterday of the most serious charge of murder. A house fire in Dryden, New York has sadly claimed the lives of 3 people, including a 3-year-old girl. The Tompkins County Sheriff says a 4th person is in the hospital. 4 dogs perished in the blaze on Cortland Road in Dryden. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. Well, this week marks the 5-year anniversary of the legalization of recreational marijuana in New York. According to the state health department, 2 million adults are consuming cannabis on a regular basis in New York. Police point out that since pot was decriminalized on March 31st, 2021, they're seeing a lot more of it at school, mostly in the form of vaping. Betsy Lehman is a school resource officer in Syracuse.
Part of the problem is not just catching the students with the vaping devices themselves, but the effects that it has on the learning environment and their impairment.
Experts say marijuana use can damage developing brains and has been linked to an increased risk for heart attacks, lung disease, and stroke. A Pennsylvania politician is pitching a plan to separate private and public high school sports when it comes to crowning state champions. Coaches have long complained that private schools have an unfair advantage over the public ones because they can recruit kids from anywhere they want. Public schools must play with the students in their district. Now, State Senator Marty Flynn is doing something about it. He's sponsoring a bill that would force the PIAA into creating separate championships for public and private schools.
There's kids from Uganda coming in to play on basketball teams against kids from a neighborhood that it just doesn't add up to me.
Private schools won 9 of the 12 state championships in high school boys basketball this year in Pennsylvania. PIAA Executive Director Mark Byers is worried about what would happen in court instead of on the court if this separation were to occur.
If we're going to treat our members separately but equally, it could bring about a constitutional challenge that it's an unequal treatment to the membership.
But critics argue all that winning by private schools, that's unequal treatment. Once again, Mark Byers.
And I don't dispute the numbers. We recognize that. It always heats up following a football season or basketball seasons. Those are the two that really ring the bell more than others.
Public and private schools in Pennsylvania have not played in separate playoffs in more than 50 years. 1974 was the last time that happened. We've got more sports. Next, it's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Philadelphia 76ers put up a big number last night in taking down the Wizards. Paul George scored 39 points. Tyrese Maxey added 28, and VJ Edgecombe had 23 points as well as 10 assists. Philadelphia starting 5 shot just under 70% from the field for the game as they won it 153-131. Karl Anthony Towns turned in a triple-double with the stat line of 20 points, 11 boards, and 11 assists. OG Anunoby had a double-double with 25 points and 13 boards. And Mikal Bridges chipped in with 24 points. The Knicks knocked off Memphis 130-119. Also winning on the hardwood, the Hawks, Celtics, Kings, Pacers, Rockets, Nuggets, and Spurs. There were just 3 games in the NHL yesterday with the Canucks, Kings, and Sharks picking up the W. Now to baseball. The Yankees continue to roll as they won their 5th game of the season, 5-3 over Seattle. Paul Goldschmidt hit a 3-run shot to lead the Bronx Bombers. The Mets got a home run from Juan Soto, but that was all they got as they lost to the Cardinals in 11 innings, 2-1. The Amazons, not so amazing. They went 1 for 29 with runners in scoring position in the series. O'Neal Cruz went deep again, his 3rd homer in 2 games. The Pirates bested the Reds 8-3. Paul Skeens 5 innings of 1-run ball to get his first win of the season. The Phillies rallied from a 4-run deficit and beat the Nats in 10, 6-5. Rookie Justin Crawford, the game-winning RBI. Also winning on the diamond, the Orioles, Astros, Royals, Padres, Braves, Rockies, Marlins, Brewers, Cubs, D-backs, and Guardians. That is a look at sports.
Okie doke, Randy, thank you kindly. It's still to come on the Noon Report. The president says we're well on our way toward ending the war in Iran. The Artemis II crew is on its way to the moon tomorrow. And what's so good about Good Friday coming up tomorrow? We'll talk to a local pastor about that after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Is Easter a pagan holiday? Well, in his treatise on the reckoning of time, 8th century English monk the Venerable Bede proposed that the word Easter comes from the name of a pagan goddess. Here's what he wrote. Eostramaneth has a name which is now translated Paschal month, and was once called after a goddess of theirs named Eostara, in whose honor feasts were celebrated in that month, end quote. Modern pagans, having latched on to this whole idea, further associated Eostara, the Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility, with Ostara, a Germanic goddess of spring. Both of those names, of course, sound an awful lot like Easter. Well, there are multiple problems with this idea, the Venerable Bede notwithstanding. First, the church had fought for centuries by this point to turn people from paganism. Therefore, it's unlikely that one of the most important Christian holidays would be named after a pagan goddess. More importantly, there's no evidence of a goddess named Eostara aside from Bede, nor is there evidence for a Germanic goddess named Ostara. And the real story of where the day's name came from is probably a bit more complicated. New converts, after receiving intensive instruction, were baptized on Easter Sunday. The day was known as Dominica in Albis, or the Sunday in white, because of the white robes worn by the catechumens. It may be that Albis was misunderstood to be the plural of Alba, or dawn, which was then translated in Old High German into the word Eostarum. And it's likely that the words Easter and Ostern both derive from that word. Another common argument is that Easter traditions, such as rabbits and decorating eggs, were fertility symbols with roots in paganism. Some modern pagans even claim, without any evidence, that the worship of Ostara involved these very things. However, the connection of these items to Easter is much less elaborate and far more recent than any mythical pagan past. During the Holy Week fast preceding Easter, Christians were prohibited from eating eggs. The chickens, however, kept laying. So eggs laid during Holy Week were considered holy eggs. The practice of decorating them began in the 13th century, many centuries after Europe had already turned from paganism. The egg was seen as a symbol of the resurrection, with Christ bursting free from the tomb in the same way that a chicken would burst free from the egg. Another version of the Easter has roots in paganism idea associates the celebration of the resurrection with the ancient Sumerian myth of Tammuz and Ishtar. This myth, which is an explanation of the annual cycle of death and winter, tells of Tammuz and Ishtar spending half a year in the underworld before having a new birth when they're released for 6 months each spring. That myth bears little resemblance to the 3 days Jesus spent in the tomb and his once-and-for-all resurrection from the dead. Even so, this story, and others like it, may in fact be connected to Christianity, but just not in the way we normally think. In fact, we most likely have it just the wrong way around. As C.S. Lewis described in Mere Christianity, quote, "And what did God do? He sent the human race what I call good dreams. I mean, those queer stories scattered all throughout heathen religions about a God who dies and comes to life again, and by his death has somehow given new life to men." Lewis believed that these myths were hints that God gave to a pagan world of the person and work of Christ. In other words, the argument that myths are the source of the story of the resurrection has it exactly backwards. The resurrection actually happened, and it is the reality to which these myths actually point. And because the resurrection actually happened, it's worth celebrating. With all of our hallelujahs, raised glasses, and an awful lot of joy. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Let's head outside. The always dependable Kevin Williams.
Here
Here is your family life forecast for this afternoon. Mostly cloudy skies, a break of sun, and a passing shower. High temperatures mostly 50s to around 60. Tonight, some clouds, maybe a shower. Low temperatures mid-40s to the mid-50s. Warmer tomorrow, clouds, some sunshine, a shower or thunder shower. The high temperature in most areas breaking 70. Saturday, variably cloudy, couple showers. High temperatures mid-60s to the middle 70s.
Okay, things will be greening up big time out there. Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Lots to get to Thursday, April 2nd. Iran, no longer a threat, says President Trump.
They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer. This is a true investment in your children and your grandchildren's future.
Mr. Trump addressing the nation in prime time last night, giving a progress report on Operation Epic Fury. He's sticking to his timeline that major combat operations will be over with in 2 to 3 weeks.
These past 4 weeks, our armed forces have delivered swift, decisive, overwhelming victories on the battlefield. Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them, are now dead.
Meantime, a barrage of Iranian missiles rained down last night on Israel, the first night of Passover. Reporter Mike Tobin is in Tel Aviv.
19 people were injured directly by missile fire. An 11-year-old girl is now in critical condition with shrapnel wounds. Mostly what we see, particularly here in the central part of Israel, are cluster bombs fired in by Iran. And that is because even when the interceptors break them up, you still have smaller bombs falling on anything below.
That's Mike Tobin in Tel Aviv. In a speech last night, President Trump predicted Iran's chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz will end once the war ends. He's calling on America's allies to go ahead and seize the oil there for themselves. After a successful liftoff last night, 4 astronauts aboard the Orion space capsule are spending the day today in low Earth orbit before they accelerate tomorrow toward the moon. They should get there in 3 to 4 days.
We have a beautiful moonrise. We're headed right at it.
It's NASA's first human lunar mission since 1972, and the agency hopes many more will follow.
Correspondent Tony DeCopel, former astronaut Mike Massanino, says this is our first step toward eventually colonizing the moon.
We're sending people to the moon to develop a station there, a settlement there, to stay, to learn not only about the moon, but more about our place in the universe. A new era has really started, and this was the first step. And if we choose, and I hope we will choose as a world to continue this journey.
The Artemis II crew will eventually slingshot around the far side of the moon, traveling a distance of approximately 252,799 miles from Earth. That is the farthest any human has ever traveled from this planet. The crew will splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California a week from tomorrow. President Trump's bid to end birthright citizenship faces an uphill battle at the U.S. Supreme Court. Correspondent Jan Crawford.
Sitting in the public section of the courtroom, the president showed no emotion as the justices expressed skepticism over his executive order denying birthright citizenship to all babies born on U.S. soil. Trump's lawyers argued the modern-day crisis of illegal immigration called for a different understanding of citizenship.
We're in a new world now where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen. Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
The Constitution's 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. But the Trump administration argues the 14th Amendment was intended to guarantee citizenship to freed slaves and their descendants, and not the roughly 250,000 babies born in the U.S. to non-citizen parents every year.
Jan Crawford at the Supreme Court, a decision in this case expected by early summer. There's a tentative deal, we're told, to end the partial government shutdown.
House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune say they've agreed to fund the Department of Homeland Security except for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, which would be funded later through reconciliation. President Trump has endorsed the plan, but it's not clear if the House will go along with it. Republicans like Minnesota's Michelle Fischbach have demanded an all-or-none approach.
We will not accept a funding bill that does not support our Homeland defenders, our ICE agents, and our Border Patrol.
That report from CBS's Michael Wallace. The National Weather Service confirming an EF1 tornado touchdown Tuesday in Cattaraugus County, New York.
According to the Weather Service, the tornado touched down at 3:43 p.m. 2 miles south
southwest of Machias and was on the ground for 3 minutes with an estimated maximum wind speed of 107 miles per hour. The path was 1.5 miles long and 150 yards wide. There were no reports of injuries, but property damage cleanup is ongoing. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Thank you, Dee. Nestle's launching an online tracker to help locate over 400,000 stolen Kit Kat bars. The company's turning to the public for help in this ongoing investigation. Last week, robbers took about 12 tons of Kit Kat bars from a truck that had left an Italian production site bound for Poland. Nestle's stolen Kit Kat tracker allows customers to enter an 8-digit batch code to determine if their bar is from this missing shipment. You're tuned in to the Noon Report for Thursday on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm your host, Sarah Harnish. With me today, Pastor Jay Lascolia. We're talking Good Friday. Faith Under Fire is about religious persecution, and there is no other story as powerful on religious persecution as the death of Jesus Christ. Tomorrow is Good Friday, and that is the second most important day in Christian history behind Sunday, Jesus' resurrection. What is good about Good Friday, Jay?
Johnny Hart, in his famous comic, BC Comic, had these 3 pictures, and it just says this. One of the characters says, "I hate the term Good Friday." And the other character says, "Why?" And he says, "Well, my Lord was hanged on a tree that day." And then the second character says, "If you were going to be hanged that day and he volunteered to take your place, how would you feel?" And the one guy says, "Good." And the other guy walks away saying, "Have a nice day." Good Friday is good because Jesus took all of our mistakes, all of our sin, made a way for us to be with the Father, adopted into the family, when all of that was nailed on the cross that day. And he said, "It is finished."
Can you share a little history with us? Why palm branches? Why garments on the ground? Share what you know about what went down this week historically.
It's interesting because so many Jews at the time were waiting for a Messiah to come in and set them free from the oppression of Rome. But the king that would come in actually set them free from the oppression of their own soul, their own sinfulness. But it did have historical significance, when Judas Maccabeus, he led a successful revolt restoring Jerusalem and the temple. When he entered Jerusalem in 164 BC, people were waving palm branches as he was coming in. When David came back from a conquest, he rode in on a horse, as well as Judas Maccabeus. They rode in on horses, and they were waving palm branches. But when Jesus came in, he wasn't riding on a horse. He humbled himself and was riding a colt or donkey rather than a war horse. And that was significant because that fulfilled the prophecy in Zechariah 9:9. "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." So Jesus comes in peace and humility, not to overthrow Rome, but to overthrow sin.
It's pretty easy to get caught up in the circumstances of really hard things. But Jesus' story is that we look to the goodness of God and how he can redeem what is hard instead of what's being done to us. What do you think the message of Good Friday is?
You have a perfect and loving Father that will stop at nothing to bring you into the family and love on you. And I just say this to anybody who maybe feels far away from God or doesn't feel they're good enough for God. Well, guess what? None of us were good enough. None of us are good enough. That's why we need Jesus, and he makes us good. He makes us whole as children of God.
Somebody's listening, and this is the first time that they've heard this. Where should someone start if they've had no exposure to Christianity at all?
First, look for a church that has a Good Friday service, because you're going to hear that message very clearly. of what Jesus did for you. I got to tell you, a great resource out there is the series The Chosen. In fact, season 5 did a tremendous job of portraying Holy Week leading up to Jesus' arrest. So I would say those are two places to look. Look for a Good Friday service. You know, Amazon Prime Video has The Chosen. Start watching that. I mean, I don't think there was an episode I watched where I wasn't crying by the end of it. Just a powerful resource. And if you're looking to open a Bible, if you have a Bible or you want to get a Bible and you can walk into a Christian church and they'll give you a Bible, I would say start reading in the book of John. John is a great place to start and understand the heart of Jesus and his love for all of us.
What about cell phones? Any good resources with apps or reading or things that'll point you in the right direction?
Yes, the YouVersion Bible app is phenomenal with scripture verses each day. They've got a whole series of teaching videos on this Easter season and what Good Friday is and what Easter Sunday is. They've got reading plans. So I highly recommend the YouVersion Bible app. You know, as much as I love celebrating Easter Sunday, and I remember the old preacher who preached, Sunday's coming, Sunday is coming. But for me, Good Friday, it's a moment to reflect and just thank the Lord. Good Friday is very special. You said it's the second most important, obviously Easter Sunday first. But don't skate over Good Friday. Really reflect on what was done for you.
Follow Jay at Jason Cherie Lascolia on Facebook.
All right, thank you, sir. So good to hear from our good friend Jay Lascolia, former colleague here at Family Life. Powerful message there about Good Friday. This is the Noon Report on Family Life.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast as we head into the Easter weekend. We do so with some warmer weather due tomorrow and Saturday. There'll even be a little sun. There'll also be a couple of showers and even a thunder shower. Then as we head toward Easter Sunday, a cold front will cross the area. It's going to bring rain ahead of it and along that front later Saturday night into Easter Sunday morning. The rain will taper in the afternoon, but the temperatures will taper as well. Much cooler air arrives during Easter Sunday. In the meantime, for this afternoon, mostly cloudy skies, a break of sun, and a passing shower. High temperatures, mostly 50s to around 60. Tonight, some clouds, maybe a shower. Low temperatures, mid-40s to the mid-50s. Warmer tomorrow, clouds, some sunshine, a shower, a thunder shower. The high temperature in most areas breaking 70. Saturday, variably cloudy, couple showers, high temperatures mid-60s to the middle 70s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally, noon, we celebrate a taste of childhood, and it's well worth the revisit. Bree Tennis files this report.
Today is National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day. Skippy Brand says the ratio is 60% peanut butter to 40% jelly, but you can build yours any way you like. You can eat it fresh, fry it in a pan, add extras like bacon or bananas. Totally okay. So today, lean into nostalgia. Unless you're among the 2% of us who are allergic or the 10% of us who hate peanut butter altogether. More for us. I'm Bree Tennis.
Boy, that's the truth. PB&J, nothing better. Thank you, Bree. And just like that, we're out of time. That's our world. The world we live in. Thursday, April 2nd. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report. Heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.